Hello, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for coming. I'm really happy to be here today to be able to share a little bit of my work with you guys, and always happy to come to B&H, especially if I'm going to be promoting Fujifilm gear, which I love to work with. So I always like to start my talks giving a little bit of insight about am I on? Yeah. I mean, I'm on. Is the mic on? Great. So I like to start giving a little bit of insight about my work or just how I got into photography, because I think it's, well, you don't know me for once, maybe you know my work, but you don't know me personally, but also my trajectory as an artist, it's really influential into the kind of work that I do today. So before I became a photographer, I was actually a mime, and I studied with Marceau, which I know that probably a lot of you know. And I did mime for about 10 years professionally before I became a photographer. And mime really taught me a lot about, one of Marceau's teacher, Etienne Ducou, used to say that the art of mime is a lot similar to the art of being human. And it's kind of true, because when you study mime is a way of expressing stories or telling stories without using words. So it becomes very primal, because before language came in, we used to talk, not sign language, but more physical, right? Our communication was physical, was body language. And mime really tries to bring that into the stage and bring it into a more stylized way, but it's very fascinating to study human interaction from that point of view, which is purely you take away everything from the human and there's just the body. And we used to say, if you take an actor, for example, you can take away the music, you can take away the theater, you can take away the words, you can take away the play, but you can still act if you have your body. And that's it. That is still influential, the type of work that I do today, because photography in itself, in its very essence, is trying to capture that. It's trying to capture the human condition without the necessity of using words. It's trying to portray life as it is, and you basically don't need words. And I am from the school of thought that a lot of people sometimes like to put their work up and then have a caption under it, or just a inspirational quote. Lame. Kidding. A little bit. But I think the work should speak by itself. I think when you put something up, it should speak by itself. So that's how I started artistically. And then when I started doing photography in 2007, and basically what happened was that when I went back to Puerto Rico, where I'm from studying in Paris, basically my parents got in my case, and they were like, okay, it was fine to be a mime for a while. Now you have to actually do something with your life. I was like, that's not funny, guys. I spent a lot of time doing this. But I went back to school, and I studied graphic design. And in graphic design, I took photography, and I really found that parallel that I was talking about between what I was doing on stage, and I found when I took a picture, it was amazing, because I was able to capture those stories without words, but this time I was able to keep them, because the problem with theater is that once the curtain is down, then the play is basically done, and it's very hard to repeat that same experience. Whereas in photography, you take a picture, and now you can keep it, and then you can keep telling the story. And especially now, thanks to social media and the internet, then you can really put that story out there for the world to see, and you can just give that story a little bit of a longer life. Now, street photography in particular is something that I started about 2010, if I'm not mistaken. And what happened was that while I was doing photography, I started working as a photojournalist, and I was fine shooting people as long as I had a job to do. And it was okay, because if someone screamed at me, I was like, no, I'm a photojournalist. I have an institution besides me. But when it came to my personal work, I was very afraid of actually shooting people, because if people ask me, well, why are you taking this picture? Because. And it was very intimidating. So what I did was that I started I decided to face that fear face on. And then what other way to face that fear of shooting people than doing street photography? Because, you know, it's very confrontational. You're there, you're with your camera, and there's no intermediaries. So I started doing street photography, and in the beginning I was a little bit shy with my pictures. I would shoot from the side, I would shoot, you know, from different angles and try not to get caught. But little by little I got more and more used to, you know, doing it. And one of the people that got me into street photography was this woman that I met in Chicago while I was living there, and her name was Candace Casey. And Candace was this very candid woman, and she had like an amazing portfolio of travel and street photography, and in one of our conversations I asked her, it's like, how do you do this? How do you, you know, like get your camera and approach people or just take pictures? And she was like, just do it. You know, a camera is something that it's visual. People are going to see it. So if they have a problem with it, they're gonna let you know. They're gonna, you know, like you're gonna know. So you either take the picture or not, but you just get out there and do it. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense, you know, and I just started doing it. I just started going out every day in Chicago, and I started doing it. So when we talk about street photography itself, what is street photography? And for me, street photography is an up-close and personal documentation of everyday life where the human element is the main focus. And how close would you think? I think this close, you know. I like to get close to people. I like to get that story, and there's no other feeling for me that assimilates that. I believe street photography needs to evoke an emotion. When you see a picture, I believe you need to feel what the person is feeling on that picture. At the same time, I believe street photography should look back at the audience. It should look back at the viewer and put the viewer in that position as if it was him that was there at that moment. So I believe it really looks back at the spectator. If you take, for example, this picture, and some of the pictures that I take, often people think that are portraits and that I'm asking people to, you know, to pose. And most of the time I don't. I did do a series like that, but I just really like when the people in the street look back at me, because you can really get a window into that person. And this one, for example, it was not a portrait. I was in Guatemala. I was with my camera out, and this little kid was just like looking at me, staring at me, and I just took that picture. And again, I think it's very interesting how you put the viewer in front of that person looking straight back at you. Also, I believe street photography should tell a story. It has to tell a story. And in a way, it becomes your own narrative and your own fiction. If you take this photo, for example, possibly, you know, passerbys didn't see what was happening on that billboard or that advertisement behind it. But because I took that picture, when they were doing that, now there's a conversation there that really wasn't there. But at the moment that I take that picture, I am creating that narrative for the audience. You know, in real life, yes, the advertisement was there, but the real guy was not going like, "Oh my God, they're kissing," you know. But it looks like that for the picture. So I believe that you are creating your own narrative when you're telling a story, when you're taking a picture, and actions and interactions are more interesting than just people standing. And that's, for example, you know, in the example of this picture, I was in Cuba, and I saw this woman. One of the most interesting things about Cuba when you go there is that people are really, really making with what they have. And you see people doing this, you know, like selling little batteries and selling, you know, like cigars in the street corners, and it's very interesting. And getting those interactions and actions as opposed to just people standing really makes for telling stories. Now, when we come to street photography, I like to tell people always what I believe are the first 3 basic rules of street photography. And the very, very first rule of street photography is that you should know the law. And this is very important for several reasons. In the United States, I'm pretty sure a lot of you are versed in this, but in the United States, the First Amendment protects our right to take pictures, as long as it is in a public space. Anyone and everything is basically fair game. I think the only place that you should need to be careful of it's playgrounds, but that it's self-explanatory, I believe. But anywhere else, if it's in a public space, it is, and that's because there's no expectation of privacy. If you're in a public place, you know, it's what we call it. If you're in a private place or a business, then there's what is called expectation of privacy. People expect to be, you know, in a protected space. But if you're out, and you're fair game. Now, one of the reasons why it's important that you as a photographer know that it's not so much as a defense mechanism, so that if someone asks you, like, no, it's my right, you know, because that's gonna get you punched anyways. You know, as long as you get defensive, the game is done. But it's more for you as a photographer to repeat it as a mantra, and that's what I used to, you know, when I started doing street photography and I learned about the law and all these things. It was one of the first things I learned, and I tried to look all the information that I could as far as the law. And when I knew that I was not doing anything wrong legally from a legal standpoint of view, then I would repeat that to myself every time I would go out. And you know, like, people would give me mean looks sometimes. It's like, I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm not doing anything wrong. You know, so I put that in my head because people sometimes are gonna make you feel that way. You know, people are gonna. I've been punched. Well, and I haven't been punched. I cannot mess this up, but it's not much to mess. But anyways, but you know, I've been like pushed aside and stuff like that. But I keep repeating to myself, it's like, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm right. So really, if you decide to invest yourself in street photography, learn about that and make it your mantra, and make yourself feel that you're not doing anything wrong at all, even if people are like, you know, like what that guy did to me. It's not the same everywhere you go, so also make sure that if you travel, you know, look up those laws before you even get into the plane, because otherwise you're gonna get excited about going to Europe, for example, and I'm gonna take pictures, and then when you get there, you realize that the law over there is completely different. As far as I understand, the law in most of the European Union is that here, for example, when you take the picture, the rights of the pictures are yours because you took it. In France, and I believe in most of the European Union, except for London or England, which now might not be in the European Union, we'll see about that, but except for London, except for Britain, is that the picture, whoever is in the picture has a right to the picture. So if you take, basically the law for street photography there is that you need to make sure that there's at least more than 5 people in the frame, and that none of the 5 people are recognizable, are instantly recognizable. If they're recognizable, then you know, you can get in trouble for that. You can always take the picture, but then if they notice, they're gonna ask. And I have a friend who was telling me his street photographer in Berlin, and then someone, the street photographer there was doing an exhibition, and the person in the picture went to the show and saw themselves in the picture. So you know, it got into a big legal thing, and they ended up having to pay the person. So always do your research before you go anywhere. This was in Cuba. In Cuba and in Guatemala, both of the pictures that I showed, this one and the previous one, it's basically similar to the United States. You can take pictures of anything as long as it's in a public space. So always make sure to do that research. And I'm just showing some pictures because I liked here. So the second rule of street photography, I believe, is know your gear. After you know the law, you have to make sure to know your equipment and to be comfortable with your equipment. Most situations when you're out in the street happen really, really fast. You know, like things like this happen in a blink of an eye. And if you're not ready with your camera in the right settings, or if you don't know how to adjust your settings in the camera at the right moment, then you're gonna miss it. So your camera should be an extension of your eye. So it should be able to capture at the same rate as you are. So that can only happen if you are comfortable with your equipment. For example, in a case like this, I saw what was happening and I had to like shoot really fast. The guys were in a motorcycle and they were taking that selfie, and if I would have been able to like make the right adjustments at the right time, I would have been able to capture that picture. Especially learn the auto and the semi-auto modes. They're there for a reason, and technology has advanced to a point, especially in the Fujifilm cameras, that they're very fast in adapting to different situations. So make sure you learn, like aperture priority, shutter speed priority, and the P. Well, Fujifilm doesn't have P, but other cameras have P, and it's like professional mode. But the Fujifilm cameras is very easy because you just put both to A's and you're in auto mode like really fast. So make sure to learn those modes, because again, not only so you can be able to switch from one to another depending on the type of picture that you want to take, and that's something that's very important. One of my photography teachers would tell me, you have to be able to make the picture that you want to make, not the picture that you were able to make. And in a case, for example, like this, I wanted to capture, this is one of the places that I love to shoot at the most is around here, 34th and 6th, in that area. And if you go there by like 5 p.m. So let's say 4:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. it's mayhem. It's people running everywhere, and there's not even space for people in the sidewalk if you walk around there. So I really love that area, and I love to capture that, like that movement of people because they're running. And you want to try to capture that emotion, right? So what I did to capture that emotion, as I set it up for like shutter priority, and I really lowered my shutter speed to about a 30th of a second, and I was shooting, like I was able to pan and shoot people passing that way. And really don't be a snob about it. Don't feel like I need to shoot manual. When I first moved to New York, I was a struggling artist, and I was looking for different jobs. And I went to this job interview for a stock imaging company, and the guy interviewing me said like, well, what mode do you shoot on mostly? And I said, well, it depends on what I'm shooting, but most of the time aperture priority. And he was like, oh my god. It's like I said something, like I was cursing at him. It's like, well, the camera is, the modes are there for a reason. You have them, and technology has advanced to the point that we can use them. So don't be a snob about that stuff. Just use it. At the end of the day, your eye works in auto mode anyways, right? Your eye adjusts automatically to the situations. So if we have the technology to do it, then why not do it? It's the same thing with autofocus. It's like, oh, I need to shoot, manual focus. Why? If your camera can do it now, if the focus speed is becoming like very as fast as your eye, then why dwell on that? Be sure to use whatever you have at your reach. Again, situations like this, you need to be able to you see something and you need to be able to jump on that and catch it. I love this picture. I'm just saying, it's like all the yellow that was happening there. It's like things like that you cannot buy, I guess. You cannot make them up. And the third rule of street photography is basically do it. Just go out and, as Candace Casey was telling me, just do it. And do it every day. Go out. Take out your camera. If you're going from just the market, or if you're just doing a stroll. This was when I was in Cuba, and I was in Cuba specifically because I was shooting for my dance series. But every time I would go out just to do whatever, I would just have my camera with me and just take advantage of that time that I had, and I was shooting. Even if it's 10 minutes a day, just go out and do it. I believe it was Eric Kim, but I'm not 100% sure, that said it's better to shoot 10 minutes a day than 4 hours once a month. If you can just go out every day and just take your camera with you, shoot 10 minutes, you're gonna be able to develop a sense or an instinct for that. One of my favorite books that I've read to date is called Blink, The Power of Thinking Without Thinking, and I recommend you guys to read it. It's by Malcolm Gladwell, and the book is about a lot of the reasons, a lot of the decisions that people take in life, professionally and also in everyday life, and how are those decisions sometimes biased by things that we're not really aware at the moment. But so it does talk about certain prejudices that we have, but it also talks about how, for example, professionally, out of just doing things over and over and over again, or just a routine, you start taking decisions without noticing the reason why you really took it, and then you realize that you took the right decision at a certain moment. And one of the favorite examples that he tells in the book is about this fireman, this captain from a fire department. They went into a building, and he had, his whole squad was inside the building, and then he had the instinct to ask people, all his squad, to get out. And he didn't know exactly why, he just knew that they had to get out. And although everything that they were seeing really felt like it was a normal fire, but he just had the feeling to just like, get out, get out, get out. So he took out all his squad, and like 2 seconds after, the whole building collapsed, right? And then sometimes people say, like, something told me to do this. It's not really something that is telling you, it's experience. And then when he's telling the story about the fireman, and when the captain analyzed the situation afterwards, he realized that the floor was warmer than everything else, which meant that the fire was coming from down. And it was not visible at the moment, but he could feel it, and he could, it was just a split-second decision that he made based on experience. And it's the same thing that's going to happen with street photography. If you go out every single day to shoot, you're going to start developing a sense for what you see, and you sort of become like a scanner, like a human scanner, and your brain starts thinking in a very different way, and you start thinking pictures and things. And I always like to tell people there's no luck. People say something like, oh, you were lucky that you took that picture, or you were lucky that was happening. It's like, no, I don't believe there's luck. You were there, but if you wouldn't have made the conscious decision to take that picture, then nothing would have happened. You wouldn't have had the picture. But because you took the decision to make that picture, then there's no luck. There's actually a decision that you made. So other things that I like to share with people is this picture is a perfect example of how people usually react to street photography, and I love it because it's everything in one same picture. You have the indifference on the far left, you have the don't take my picture in the center, and then you have the person that poses for the picture. And those are 3 different reactions that you can encounter in the street. So you have to be able to like manage those, and also not be afraid of any one of those decisions, or of one of those reactions, because they all tell a story. And wait, hold on, let me go back. Don't look at that picture yet. Don't look at that one picture yet. Because there's something that I like to share about this picture in particular, is that when I go out to shoot, I don't intend to be provocative, and that's something that is very important. Every photographer has their style, and by nature what we're doing is sort of provocative. You're kind of getting into people's spaces, depending on how you do it. But you're try not to be provocative just for the sake of being provocative. That's the same thing with like modern art or whatever kind of art. It's like it's provocative. If something is provocative, it's because it provokes a reaction, but you should not be trying to like push that reaction on people. And that's important for me. When I'm shooting out, I go by the don't do to others that what you don't like people to do to you. So I try not to do to people what I don't like people doing to me. And I've seen people take my picture in the street. I smile. So now the next one. Now you can look at this one, and you can laugh, because you laughed before. But you know, failure does come with the territory. You're gonna fall on your face while shooting. You know, you're gonna have mistakes. You're gonna err a lot of times. But the perfect analogy that I see with this is like tennis. I love watching tennis because it's a sport that is very psychological, and you're completely by yourself in the court. There's no coach out there telling you, you know, like, change this, switch that. You have to make those decisions by yourself, and if you make a mistake, then you just have to keep going. And you know, you're gonna make mistakes, and you have to learn when you're shooting every day. You have to learn to be able to forget those mistakes and don't dwell on that. Don't say like, oh, I lost that picture, and then you spend the next 20 minutes thinking about the picture that you didn't get. And the reality of things is that you never really had the picture, right? It was never really yours to begin with. So don't dwell on something that you never really had. Celebrate what you get, but then if you don't get something, just keep going, keep shooting, and you're gonna get something else afterwards. Learn the rules and then break them. And I want you to read that very, very, very long quote by Gary Winogrand, because I really believe that when you're going out to do street photography, I'm gonna read it for you guys anyways. It says, when I photograph, I see life. That's what I deal with. I don't have pictures in my head. I don't worry about how the picture is going to look. That will take care of itself. It's not about making a nice picture. That anyone can do. And really, I think the best way to be successful with this is go out there to picture life. Go out there to capture life. And in a way, it's like it's as if you were note-taking about the things you see in life. I realized when I was doing street photography every single day, that I started to be more instinctual, not only about the pictures that I was taking, but about the people that I was seeing, and my reaction and my relationship with this city. And New York is a beautiful city. Yay, New York. But because there's so many people here, and that's what I really loved about it, that I started getting to have a relationship with the people, and suddenly I found myself opening doors for people in the street. I was not going to that building. I just realized that because I was scanning everything, that someone needed help, I would just help and keep going. So again, you're note-taking. You're going out and making notes about life. So don't think about taking pictures. And with that goes this other one. It's like, don't compete and don't compare. Don't compete with other photographers. Don't look at other people's work thinking, I wish I was doing that. Don't compare yourself. Again, you're not in this to take pictures. It's not a competition. You're in this because, I mean, the competitive nature in art is very innate to it. But when you go out, just think about taking notes about life, and don't think that much about trying to impress other people or trying to become be part of a club. Just think about what you want to do and the things that you want to capture and that you want to learn. Another good advice is get close. It's a style choice, but I prefer that for myself, as I don't like to shoot with long lenses. I don't like to shoot street photography with telephoto. I like to be part of that story that I'm creating. So in a way, you are a participant on that picture that you're taking. If you are far away, it's basically like telling a story from a third person point of view. So you're telling it because someone told you that this happened. But if you're there, you're part of the action. It's like telling it from a first person point of view. You're really there. You're really in the action. So in a way, for better or for worse, you're going to be able to change the outcome of that picture because of the reaction that people might or might not have. But it's really going to change the pictures that you take if you are taking them from a closer angle. So mostly when I'm shooting from wider angles. Another advice that I give people is shoot sequences. When you go out and you have a chance to just stay at a street corner and something is happening, just shoot a sequence. Don't shoot just one picture. If you can, shoot several pictures, and then you're gonna get to choose which one. But be able to always like shoot a sequence instead of just one. Something that I mentioned sometimes, pick someone your own size when you're shooting. And that goes in many different ways. Don't shoot big guys if you're a small guy. But also, pick people your own size. I have to say this with a very try to be respectful of other photographers, but I've seen other people's work, for example, that they say that they're street photographers, and when you look at their portfolio, they're basically just shooting homeless people. And that's a very touchy subject. I've seen people's work that you see that there's a genuine interest for what's happening, and there's a genuine interest for documenting that in a very truthful way, but there's other people that are doing that because it's just easier to shoot, the homeless because they're there, as opposed to, other people that are in the street. They're just there, and they're more vulnerable than other parts of the community, as well as elderly. It's like people that just shoot elderly. Of course, an elderly person is not going to be able to chase you afterwards, right? So you shoot and you keep running. So try to pick people your own size. That's what I say. So how to avoid and deal with confrontation? The first thing that you need to do to avoid confrontation is don't chimp. You know what chimping is? Everyone knows what chimping is? No? So chimping is when you look down at the camera after you take a picture, and they call it chimping because you look like a chimpanzee, like trying to peel off a banana. So don't chimp, don't chimp. Why? Because if you take a picture and then look at it, then you're telling the person, I took a picture of you and I'm trying to make sure that it's fine, right? And then the person can like look back and then say, oh, you took my picture. So just try not to chimp. You review them afterwards, review them when you get home, but don't tell the people right then and there that you're taking a picture of them. Go with a friend. Don't go by yourself. The main reason why I do this when I can is so that if someone punches me, then there's at least someone that can call 911 for me, right? Because in the street, especially in New York, something happens, no one cares, right? So if you go out with a friend, there's always going to be, like someone that helps you out. But the truth is that there's safety in numbers, right? So when you go out with more people, then you feel more comfortable because, you know that you're not by yourself. So if you can, or when you can, going out with one or two friends is good. You don't have to stick together, I had this friend that I used to go out with a lot, and it's funny because when we would walk next to each other, it was like we would call pictures, like, it's mine, before I said, that's mine. The fat guy, mine. No, I didn't say that. The pretty guy, mine. Anyways, but you know what I mean, like, try to go out with a friend. Another thing is be determined. When you go out, be determined. Nobody messes with someone that is focused. If you're focused into what you're doing, nobody's gonna mess with you. They either think that you're just way too busy, that you can be messed with, or they probably think that you're like a little bit crazy, and nobody messes with crazy, right? So just like be focused, be determined when you go out, and also the fact that you have. When you're determined, also you have a project in mind, you have something in mind. So that also helps because if people do ask you, then you're so determined about what, you know exactly what you're doing, and you can give them a straight answer as opposed to, as I said before, because I'm taking a picture. You tell them I'm a street photographer or this is what I do, but be determined when you go out. The opposite of that is act dumb. A lot of times when I'm shooting out, I look very stupid. Another one is look at a distance. This is another thing that I do. And then going back to my mime days, and that's why it's so good. I would take the picture and then go like. And then I'm shooting the guy that's right in front of me. But you do that. Again, it goes back to looking determined. If you look determined, if you look decisive about something, then people don't mess with determination, period. People don't mess with someone that is focused. So if you're like out there, People are mostly, this is what's gonna happen. You shoot, people are gonna look and they go like that, and when they're turning back, I'm somewhere else, basically. Like when they turn back to look at me, then I'm somewhere else, mostly. So that's another good advice. The other one is like, again, keep walking. You shoot, you keep walking, you don't stop. Deny at all costs. You know, when I started in the beginning shooting street photography, I have a big problem in my life, and I don't know how to lie. I really don't. I get nervous when I have to lie, and I read this. There's actually a musical right now going on Broadway. It's called The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Middle of the Night. And I don't know if anyone saw that musical, but I actually read the book long before the musical came out. And the kid in the story is, I think he's Asperger's syndrome, or he's autistic, right? And I love one of the moments in the book when he explains why he can't lie. And he's saying, well, because lying, it's saying that something happened when it didn't happen. And statistically, there's so many things that could have not happened when something did happen, that his brain just couldn't factor all these things, because there's so many things he could say that then he's like, I don't know which one to choose, right? So I also can't lie. And in the beginning, it would cause me a lot of pain, because people would ask me, did you take my picture? And I would be like the self-righteous me that I am, and say, yes, sir, I did. And then I got in trouble, because then I had to explain myself, and this is what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes, you know, people be fine, but sometimes people would just not be so fine with it. So I learned that I really don't have to give people explanations. You know, this is what I'm doing. So people ask me, did you take my picture? No, I didn't. You know, at the end of the day, there's no legal obligation for you to say, you know, it's like when they tell you, you have to tell me if you're a cop. No, you don't have to tell them if you're a cop. I'm not a cop. But going back to that, yeah, I mean, you don't need to tell people exactly what you're doing. You can just deny it and keep walking. And this is something that also happens. People are like, hey, buddy. My name is Omar. Not buddy. So I just keep walking. That's too general. You should have said my name. But in the case that you are caught, in the case that someone then asks you, you know, like, stay professional. Don't try to argue with them. Try to explain them that what you're doing. And again, if you are professional enough, most of the time they're like, all right, so you're a professional. This happened to me a while back. And again, this guy tried to confront me, and I said, well, I'm a professional photographer. He's like, well, show me your card. And I was like, oh, that's fine, it's fine. And he just let me go because he let me go, as if. But, you know, he got off my case because I was a professional, because so make up a business card and just carry it with you. No, but in reality, again, be professional when you address people. And if it's unavoidable, if the person is on your case, then erase the picture. You know, it's not a big deal. Again, you never had it to begin with. Going back to our Fujifilm cameras, the biggest advantage, and this is a good way to be deceptive about this with the Fujifilm cameras, is that the X-T2 as well as the X Pro 2, they have dual card slots. So you can set the camera to shoot either backup to the second card, or you can set it to shoot JPEG and RAW. So it shoot JPEG to one card and RAW to the other one. So if you erase one picture, it's just going to erase it from one card and not from the other. So that's another way to be a little bit deceptive about this. Like, yes, sir, I erased it. So it's a good thing to have. At the end of the day, when you come to street photography, it's just nature photography. It's just wildlife photography, except you're in a different jungle. You're not shooting anything other than that. So, and you have to think of it because of several reasons. One, again, make that your mantra. You're not doing anything wrong. You're capturing life. You're studying life. When you go out to shoot birds, why do people shoot birds? Because they find them beautiful, or because they want to learn something about the habitat of the birds. So when you go out shooting street photography, do that same exact thing. Do it because you find it beautiful, or because you're trying to find or learn something about the human experience. And that goes back to, then don't just do it because other people is doing it, or because you think it's cool, or because of any other reason like that. If you're determined about what you're doing, or if you're sure about what you're doing, especially if you have like a motive that is professional, and that it's because you're studying something, you're gonna feel more comfortable when people ask you, what are you shooting? So finally, a couple of things. If you're on Instagram, I'm just gonna give you a couple of accounts that you can follow with street photography. Across Worlds so my main account, as you saw, is Omar Z Robles, but right now I'm mostly working there on dance photography, that you can see, and maybe we can have another talk here another time. But my street photography account is Across Worlds. So there you can see some of the street photography work that I've done. Fujifilm X_US, that's the Fujifilm account for the United States. So they're posting there a lot of interesting work from X photographers and other people from the X community. So make sure to check them out. Saisa Cruz Bacani is an amazing X photographer. Fujifilm X photographer that I met recently, and her story is just beautiful. How she came from being, it's very Vivian Maier kind of thing. You know, she came from being a nanny in the Philippines, I think. No, where was it? Someone knows about her? I think it was Philippines. If not, it was somewhere around there. But she came from being a nanny to being a great photographer, and she's doing street photography, and she's doing documentary work, and she's doing beautiful work. So make sure to check her out. Vika Med is a good friend of mine. She's also Puerto Rican, and she's also shooting with Fujifilm gear, and she does street photography, and it's very interesting. E. Ernst is a guy in Spain. I don't know exactly what he shoots with, but his use of lighting is amazing, and he just finds subjects and has like a very interesting way of isolating subjects that is beautiful. Alive in NYC is a friend of mine, also shooting Fujifilm gear, and he does street photography, and he does the 24-hour project that you should definitely check out. 24-hour project is a global event that they do. And it's broadcasted through Instagram and I think Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr, I think, as well. And basically they call out photographers from all over the world to take pictures for 24 hours straight, and then so you have to post one picture every hour on the hour. I did it once. It's exhausting as nothing ever else I've done in my life, but it's an amazing experience to be able to like shoot New York from dusk to dawn, like all day through. It's an amazing experience. So if you can do it once at least, it's amazing. But even if you cannot take part of it, like you can stay tuned to their account and see what happens, and then you're gonna be able to see it on the account and also on the hashtag, and see like how a day develops in the life of different countries, because it's 24 hours, but so each country has their 24 hours, right? So they usually start on a Friday to Saturday, I think, or yeah. So it starts like on a Friday in New York time, but it ends up like in like Australia time. So it's like an amazing way to like see people through like the world. A little bit of the people that have influenced my work as a street photographer and as a photographer in general are Henri Cartier-Bresson. I love his work. Brassailles. I cannot get enough of Brassailles' work. Just being like that nightlife that he captured in Paris. It's beautiful. It's something that I aspire to do, definitely. Gary Winogrand, Robert Frank, but more Gary Winogrand than anything else. I like his work because it's very casual. I don't know what other word to use to describe it. It's very everyday. When you look at his work, it's like really everyday, especially everyday New York. He's not trying to do anything catchy. He's not trying to do anything, like he's just trying to capture like very New York every day, and it's beautiful. And Robert Frank is very similar, a little bit more before, and then Vivian Maier again, because I really love that underdog story of someone that never, she never, and Candace Casey, the woman that I mentioned before, she's very much like that. Candace has been taking pictures for all of her life, and she presents herself as, she considers herself as a photographer, but it's not someone that goes around, like all self-righteous. She's like an everyday person who loves taking pictures, and she has an amazing portfolio. Gear-wise, Fujifilm, and make sure you say Fujifilm and not Fuji. Just Fujifilm, it's a whole word. I don't know, I'm very adamant about names. But so I'm currently shooting with the X-T2, mostly the X Pro 2 and the X100T. Those are like my go-to cameras right now. I guess the X100T is the camera that I take when I'm going to do anything with, when I'm going to go out with my wife around town, then I just always have the X100T with me. If not, I'm mostly shooting with the X-T2. How many of you have shot with the Fujifilm gear? Oh, it's a good number. Amazing. If you come from the X-T1, for example, or any of the X-T cameras, the previous cameras, the focus in this camera is amazing, especially if you're shooting like moving subjects. There's different modes that you can set the camera for, like continuous focus. That is amazing. And if you combine that with the grip that has this boost mode that I call beast mode, because it really turns the camera into a beast. You can shoot like 11 frames per second. So it's something that is very useful for when I'm doing my work with the dancers, because I can capture like the movement where I really wanted to. But when you're shooting street, it's great because when you're capturing people that are approaching you, you can set it to like autofocus and then to like shoot like several frames per second, and then you really are going to be able to capture that sequence of the person coming right at you. And the autofocus is amazing. Lens-wise, like I said, I shoot mostly wide. I like shooting mostly the 23 is my go-to lens for street photography, and the XF23 f1.4. I really love that lens. The 16 I use a little bit less, but I really like about the 16 that it's weather sealed, as well as the 35 too. So those ones are great for, I love shooting in the rain and I love shooting in the snow. I didn't put many snow pictures here, but I love shooting in the snow. It's crazy because it's cold and I'm Puerto Rican. So, but I actually prefer the cold. But it's great because they're weather sealed, and the cameras are like the X-T2, the X Pro 2, and the X-T1 are all weather sealed. So like you go out, you have that combo, and like you can create some amazing pictures with like the elements. So the 16, oh, I put one lens there twice. So which one did I meant instead of that one? I apologize for my mistake. No, I don't shoot 50. I shoot 56 for portraits and for my other work, but I don't shoot. I like to stay as wide as I can. I think I meant there the 16 to 35, and I don't know why I repeated it, but I think I meant the 16 to 35. I use the 16 to 30. No, the 16 to 55. I don't love to shoot zooms. Just in general, I like to stay primes, but the 16 to 35 to 16 to 55 I use when I travel. When I went to Cuba, for example, I was using that one mostly because when you travel, you never really know what you're going to encounter, and changing lenses in the middle of the street sometimes can be uncomfortable. So that's when I mostly use the primes. All right, so I think that's my time for today.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.